"Professor," Alex called out, "tell them about human pack bonding while you move. It'll help explain why I'm not leaving anyone behind." As the group began their descent, with Alex somehow managing to seal the tunnel behind them while supporting struggling students, Professor ZYX 427 spots pulsed with sudden understanding. They had always questioned why humans were classified as a Class 5 guardian species despite their terrifying capabilities. Now they knew. Humans weren't just survivors of a death world, they were protectors by nature. Every hostile aspect of their home planet had shaped them not into the monsters one might expect, but into beings who instinctively helped others survive. The professor began explaining this to the students as they moved, watching in amazement as their fear signals gradually shifted to something new, appreciation. Behind them, Alex hummed what they called a sea shanty, apparently a traditional human song for dangerous work, while ensuring no one fell behind. Then the tunnel lights went out. "Oh good," Alex's voice came from the darkness, somehow still cheerful. "Now I get to show you another fun human adaptation. Did you know Earth species evolved in deep ocean trenches where light never reaches? We kept some of those traits." The clicking sound grew louder as Alex quickly surveyed their surroundings. The corridor's emergency lights cast everything in a pulsing red glow, but the human's eyes seemed to adjust instantly, another casual demonstration of Earth-evolved adaptability. "Professor, what's behind that maintenance panel?" Alex pointed while shifting one of their alien passengers to a more secure position. "Access tunnels for the environmental systems, but they're not rated for." "Perfect." Alex was already moving. "Everyone gather round. Quick physics lesson. Vacuum exposure isn't instantly fatal. You've got about 15 seconds of useful consciousness. The key is to exhale completely before exposure, prevents lung damage from expanding gases." The students' horror signals were overwhelming the corridor's emotional dampeners. VIX 15's logic nodes were practically vibrating. You've experienced vacuum exposure? Standard emergency training for Earth space programs." Alex began prying open the panel with surprising strength. "The human record for vacuum survival is almost 3 minutes, though I don't recommend trying to beat it." The clicking reached a fever pitch. Alex's casual demeanor shifted to intense focus. "Professor, I need you to lead them through the tunnel. It slopes downward, so the gravity will be rough, but it should connect to the lower level's stable zone. I'll seal it behind us." "But the tunnel diameter?" Professor ZYX 427 spots pulsed with doubt. "It's barely large enough for someone my size." Alex grinned. "You'd be amazed how flexible humans can be. Did you know some of us do something called cave spelunking for fun? This is luxury compared to that." The first signs of atmospheric degradation began, a shimmer in the air, a drop in temperature. The students huddled closer to Alex, instinctively seeking protection from the strongest organism present. "Listen up," Alex said, their voice taking on a tone that seemed to bypass the aliens' fear responses. "We're going to move fast. Help each other. The gravity will be rough, but remember what we practiced. Professor leads, I'll bring up the rear. If anyone starts to struggle, signal immediately, no heroics." "But..." Click's 8 sensory stalk trembled. "What if the vacuum reaches us before we get through? Then you'll get to see why humans are considered extremophiles." Alex winked, yet another puzzling human gesture. "Besides, this is nowhere near as bad as the time I got caught in a Category 5 hurricane." Now that was exciting. Several students produced stress confusion signals, unable to process how a being could classify planetary-scale wind disasters as exciting. The corridor's structural integrity alarms began to sound. Alex efficiently herded the group toward the tunnel entrance, demonstrating surprising strength as they helped lift students into the opening. Alex was already helping Click's 8 onto their back. "My planet's gravity made me strong, Professor. Might as well put it to use. Besides, they grinned again, this is way easier than the time I had to carry my dog down Mount Everest. You took a companion animal up Earth's highest mountain? Vic's 15's logic nodes extended in shock. She really wanted to go. Alex laughed, seemingly unbothered by Click8's weight. Come on, everyone. Buddy system like we practiced. Stronger ones help the others. Professor, can you guide us? I'll take rear guard to make sure no one falls behind. As they organized the evacuation, Professor HFY noticed something remarkable. The students were pairing up, helping each other, even making jokes about their situation. They were mimicking human behavior patterns. Alex, the professor asked as they led the group into the corridor, does it not concern you that these students are nearly twice your age in standard years? Age just means they have more to teach me, Alex replied, now carrying two struggling students. Earth taught us that survival isn't about being the strongest or oldest, it's about working together and adapting. Speaking of which. They suddenly stopped, head tilted. Does anyone else hear that clicking sound from the ventilation system? The professor's spots went completely white. The clicking sound was a sign of imminent atmospheric invert ion, a catastrophic failure that could expose them all to hard vacuum. But Alex was already moving, their voice calm but commanding, new plan, everyone. Time for you to learn about another human specialty, the emergency evacuation. The university's emergency systems were now flashing deep crimson, but inside classroom 13, something unexpected was happening. The alien students, rather than succumbing to panic, were watching their human guest with growing fascination. That's it, Click8. You're getting the hang of it, Alex encouraged, supporting the young alien as they practiced moving under increased gravity. See how you can use your lower appendages to stabilize? Humans learned similar techniques for deep-sea diving. Professor HFY spots pulsed with academic excitement as they recorded observations. The human wasn't just helping the students survive, they were turning the crisis into an impromptu field study. Alex, Vic's 15 called out, their logic nodes flickering with curiosity despite the strain, you mentioned deep-sea diving. Our records show Earth's oceans are highly toxic acidic environments under crushing pressure. Why would humans voluntarily enter them? Alex grinned while helping another student adjust their breathing apparatus. Oh, you should see the creatures down there. There's this octopus that can change both color and texture to match any surface. Absolutely brilliant. We didn't even know they could do that until someone decided to go look. You endanger yourselves for knowledge? Click8's sensory stalk wavered in disbelief. Sure, but we take precautions. Usually. Alex paused to wipe sweat from their forehead, an action that caused several students to emit warning pheromones. Sorry about the sweating. Useful cooling system, but I know it grosses out some species. The professor's spots shifted to a questioning purple. You seem very aware of xenobiological differences, Alex. Yet you show no fear response to alien physiologies. Why would I? Alex was now fashioning makeshift gravity supports from items in their bag. Every species we've met has something amazing about them. Take your spots, Professor, they're not just beautiful, they're a complex communication system we humans can only dream of having. And Vic's 15's logic nodes? Incredible for solving multidimensional problems. We all have our strengths. A new alarm blared, the atmospheric processors were now failing completely. Alex's expression turned serious for the first time. Professor, we should move everyone to the emergency shelter. The oxygen level's getting a bit high even for my comfort, and I'm worried about pressure changes on their circulatory systems. The nearest shelter is 3 corridors away, Professor HFY spots pulsed with concern. Many students cannot move quickly under this gravity. Then we'll carry them. Alex said it so matter-of-factly that it took a moment for the implications to register. But, the combined mass, under this gravity. The professor's spots paled. In the pitch-black tunnel, the alien's bioluminescence cast a faint, flickering glow. But it was Alex who moved with surprising confidence, guiding the group with sure steps and steady hands. Your vision adapts to darkness. Professor ZYX 427 spots pulsed with curiosity, momentarily forgetting their predicament. Not as well as some Earth animals, Alex replied, helping steady a wobbling student. But we can detect shapes and movement pretty well after a few minutes. Our ancestors did a lot of hunting at twilight. Plus, the tunnel walls are giving off heat signatures, you can feel the temperature difference if you focus. You can sense thermal radiation through touch. VIX 15's logic nodes extended fully despite the cramped space. Without specialized organs? Our skin is pretty amazing. Alex's voice carried a hint of pride. It's a pressure sensor, temperature gauge, radiation detector, and repair system all in one. Speaking of which, everyone doing okay with the gravity? Remember to keep your core tight like we practiced. The students had indeed been managing better than expected. Even Clicks 8, who had initially struggled the most, was now moving with determined efficiency. I've been meaning to ask, Professor ZYX 427 ventured as they navigated a particularly steep section, why do you seem so prepared for emergencies? That supply bag of yours. Oh, that's just standard human paranoia, Alex chuckled. When you evolve on a planet that regularly tries to kill you, you learn to expect the unexpected. My dad always says, better have it and not need it than need it and not have it. Your species considers paranoia a positive trait? The professor's spots pulsed with surprise. We prefer to call it preparedness, Alex replied, then suddenly froze. Everyone stop. Listen. The group halted, their various sensory organs straining. A deep vibration was traveling through the tunnel walls. The environmental systems are restarting, Professor ZYX 427 announced, spots brightening with relief. No, Alex said quietly. That's the wrong frequency for machinery. That's tectonic movement. The alien sphere signals spiked again, but Alex's voice remained steady. The good news is, I've been through dozens of earthquakes. The bad news is, we need to move faster. The good news again is that humans are really, really good at moving faster when we need to. But the tunnel integrity, VIX 15 began. Is exactly why we're not going to panic, Alex interrupted firmly. Panic gets people killed. Instead, we're going to do what humans do best, adapt and overcome. Professor, how far to the stable zone? Approximately 200 meters, Professor ZYX 427 spots pulsed anxiously. Perfect. That's not even a decent sprint. Alex began redistributing the weakening students among the stronger ones. Everyone pair up. We're going to play a human game called Relay Race. The rules are simple, everybody makes it, nobody quits. As the vibrations intensified, something remarkable happened. The aliens, despite their terror, began to mirror Alex's focused calm. They organized themselves with unexpected efficiency, stronger ones helping the weaker, just as they'd observed the human doing. You're witnessing another unique human trait, Professor ZYX 427 explained as they moved, their spots pulsing with academic excitement even in the crisis. They instinctively create order from chaos. More remarkably, they inspire others to do the same. We just don't like feeling helpless, Alex said, now carrying 3 struggling students despite the crushing gravity. On Earth, there's always something trying to eat you, freeze you, burn you, or shake you to pieces. You either learn to handle it, or you don't survive to pass on your genes. The tunnel shuddered ominously. A small cascade of particles rained down from above. Speaking of genes, Alex added, picking up the pace even further, did you know humans have DNA from ancient viruses mixed into our genome? Earth's pathogens tried to kill us so often that we eventually just started stealing their best tricks. We're basically evolutionary kleptomaniacs. Several students actually laughed, a clear sign of human influence, as their species normally expressed humor through pheromone release. Then the first support beam cracked. Alex's voice took on that strange commanding tone again. Right, everyone? Time to learn about another human specialty, the emergency sprint. And after we survive this, I'll tell you about the time I had to outrun a pyroclastic flow. The stable zone's emergency lighting cast long shadows across the lecture hall where, 3 hours later, Professor ZYX 427's class had reassembled. The room hummed with excitement, not the earlier nervous energy of fear, but something entirely new, anticipation. Before we resume our official curriculum, Professor ZYX 427's spots pulsed with formal academic patterns. I believe we should discuss what we learned during today's unplanned practical demonstration. Alex, now sitting cross-legged on a reinforced chair, looked slightly embarrassed at the attention. Their clothes were torn and dirty, there was a small cut on their forehead that had already begun healing, and they were still somehow smiling. Click's 8 sensory stock rose first. We learned that humans don't just survive their death world, they thrive on challenges. When the tunnel began collapsing, Alex's vital signs showed increased efficiency rather than stress damage. Adrenaline, Alex explained. It's like having an internal emergency backup system. Really helps when you need to lift fallen support beams in high gravity. Which brings us to our second observation, VIX 15's logic nodes extended thoughtfully. Humans don't just adapt to survive. They adapt to help others survive. You could have easily reached the stable zone alone, Alex. You chose to risk yourself for us. That wasn't a choice, Alex said quietly. That's just being human. Professor ZYX 427 spots shifted to a deep shade of revelation. Perhaps that is the most crucial understanding we've gained. We've always classified Earth as a death world due to its extreme conditions. We assumed its inhabitants would be equally extreme, aggressive, selfish, focused solely on survival. But instead, Click's 8 continued, their sensory stalk waving with excitement. Those conditions produced a species that turns adversity into advantage, not just for themselves but for others. Every hostile aspect of Earth pushed humans to become better, Alex finished. Or at least to try to be. That's why we explore, why we push boundaries. Earth taught us that there's always a way forward, always something new to learn, always another challenge to overcome. And it's so much easier to do that together. The professor's spots pulsed with academic satisfaction. Which leads us to today's most significant revelation. The Galactic Council's policy of hiding human capabilities wasn't protecting the galaxy from humanity. It was preventing us from learning humanity's most important lesson. Which is? Alex asked, genuinely curious. That the very conditions we feared, the extremes that caused us to label Earth a death world, are precisely what made humans into the guardians and teachers we so desperately need. The professor's spots blazed with intensity. You don't merely survive adversity, you learn from it, grow from it, and most importantly, you teach others to do the same. Is that why humans seek out challenges? VIX 15 asked. To continue learning? Alex thought for a moment. Partly. But mostly it's because every challenge overcome makes us better prepared for the next one. Earth taught us that change is constant, that comfort can make you vulnerable, and that the best way to help others is to never stop growing yourself. Even if it means risking yourself? Click's 8 wondered. Especially then. Alex smiled. Because here's the real secret about living on a death world, it taught us that nothing truly great is ever accomplished alone. Every disaster Earth threw at us, we survived by working together, by teaching each other, by turning our vulnerabilities into strengths. Professor ZYX 427 spots pulsed with a final question. And what would you say to those who still fear Earth's extreme nature? Alex stood, stretching muscles that had worked against triple gravity, and grinned. I'd tell them what my grandmother always says, it's not about how hard life hits you. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. And if you can help others up along the way, that's not just survival, that's living. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Then, one by one, the students began emitting their species signals of understanding, a symphony of clicks, pulses, and pheromones that meant the same thing in any language. They finally understood why humans had been designated as a guardian species. It wasn't despite Earth's deadly nature. It was because of it. The professor's spots shifted to the formal pattern of class conclusion. I believe that concludes today's lesson on Earth classification. Next week, we'll be studying. The lights flickered ominously. Alex's grin widened. Actually, Professor, I think the environmental systems are about to offer us another practical lesson. Anyone up for some advanced study? To everyone's surprise, including their own, the entire class raised their appendages in eager agreement. After all, as they had learned, the best way to handle a Deathworld's challenges is together. The temperature had risen another 10 degrees, and the gravity was now at 2.5 times galactic standard. The students were struggling, but they had stopped panicking. Instead, they were watching Alex with growing fascination. Would you say this adaptive psychology is common among humans? VIX 15 asked, their logic nodes extended despite the strain. Alex shrugged, a peculiarly human gesture. Pretty much. We have a saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Though personally, I prefer my mom's version, what doesn't kill you gives you one heck of a story to tell later. Several students produced their species equivalent of laughter. The professor's spots pulsed with satisfaction, until a new alarm sounded. Oh dear, Professor ZYX 427 said. It appears the atmospheric composition is beginning to shift toward Earth normal levels. The oxygen content will soon reach human standard. The students' panic started to return, but Alex remained calm. No problem. I always carry an emergency kit for situations like this. Now, who wants to learn some human breathing exercises? Trust me, if it works for high-altitude mountain climbing, it'll work for this. As Alex began demonstrating breathing techniques, Professor ZYX 427 quietly added a note to their teaching records: humans don't just survive adversity, they teach others to survive it too. Perhaps this is their most remarkable adaptation of all. The classroom door slid open with a hydraulic hiss, and in walked the human exchange student. The alien's sensory organs registered surprise, the human appeared so unassuming. Average height, unremarkable coloring, and no visible defensive adaptations. Hi everyone, I'm Alex. The human smiled, displaying their blunt omnivorous teeth. Professor ZYX 427 mentioned you're studying Earth today? Before anyone could respond, the environmental warning system pulsed again. The temperature was already rising, and the artificial gravity began to fluctuate toward Earth normal levels. Ah, perfect timing, Alex said, glancing at the warning displays. Looks like we're having a practical demonstration. They began removing items from their carry bag. I brought some water bottles and snacks. Anyone interested in trying Earth-safe consumables? The students stared in horror as Alex casually set out containers of what they recognized as dihydrogen monoxide, a substance corrosive enough to carve canyons into solid rock. Professor ZYX 427 spots pulsed with academic interest. Alex, perhaps you could explain to the class how you're maintaining your composure in these deteriorating conditions? Composure? Alex looked genuinely puzzled. Oh, you mean because of the environmental controls? This is nothing. Reminds me of my grandmother's apartment in Florida. She never could figure out how to work her thermostat. The human laughed, a sound that made several students retract their sensory organs. But something else was happening. The students' panic signals were beginning to decrease. You see, Professor ZYX-427 explained to the class, humans don't just possess physical adaptations to their death world. Their psychological resilience is equally remarkable. Notice how Alex is using humor to diffuse tension, a common human coping mechanism. We're pretty good at making the best of things, Alex agreed, helping a wobbling student adjust to the increasing gravity. Here, try shifting your weight like this. That's how we handle gravity changes during space travel. Click's 8's curiosity temporarily overcame their fear. But how do humans maintain psychological stability in constant danger? Our studies show your planet experiences regular natural disasters, extreme weather events, and tectonic activity. Alex's expression grew thoughtful. You know, I never really thought of it as constant danger. It's just life. Sometimes things get rough, so we adapt. We help each other out. We make jokes about it. We learn from it. My great-grandfather used to say that pressure either breaks pipes or makes diamonds. Fascinating, Professor ZYX-427 interjected. Alex is demonstrating another unique human trait, the ability to derive wisdom from adversity and pass it through generations. They turn their survival experiences into teaching tools. Oh yes, the professor agreed. Humans require periodic unconsciousness they call sleep. However, their spots dimmed ominously. They can go without it for days when necessary. Some humans deliberately deprive themselves of sleep to what they pull an all-nighter, usually for education or entertainment purposes. The students' horror was interrupted by a sudden alert on their information feeds. The professor's spots shifted to a deep crimson. Ah, they said quietly. It seems we have a perfect opportunity for a practical demonstration. The environmental controls for this section of the university have just failed. Conditions will become Earth-like in approximately 10 minutes. Panic erupted in the classroom. The professor raised their appendages for calm. Don't worry, they assured the terrified students. I've taken the liberty of inviting a human exchange student to assist with today's lesson. They should be arriving any moment to help us survive what they would consider a lovely spring day. The next day, Professor ZYX-427's classroom hummed with nervous energy. The students had spent their rest cycle researching Earth, and their anxiety signals were strong enough to trigger the room's calming field. Today, the professor announced, we examine the physical evidence of Earth's deadly nature, and humanity's remarkable adaptations. They gestured to a series of holographic displays. First, let's consider their gravity resistance. The main display showed a human lifting what appeared to be metal weights. This human is voluntarily experiencing additional gravitational stress. They call it working out. The professor's spots flickered with bemusement. They deliberately strain their bodies to become stronger. Click's 8 sensory stalk trembled. But, why would they damage themselves intentionally? Damage? The professor's spots pulsed with amusement. Watch. The display shifted to a time-lapse showing the human's muscle fibers tearing and regenerating, growing stronger. Several students recoiled in horror. Humans don't just heal from injury, they adapt to become more resistant to it. Their bodies actively repair and strengthen themselves in response to stress. The professor brought up another display. Consider their thermal tolerance. The students watched footage of humans moving from ice-covered landscapes to steaming jungles. Most species require careful environmental controls to survive temperature variations of even a few degrees, Professor ZYX-427 explained. Humans can function in temperatures ranging from -50 to +50 degrees Celsius with minimal protection. VIX-15's logic nodes extended fully. That's a wider range than most industrial machinery can handle. How do they prevent molecular breakdown? Their bodies automatically adjust, the professor said. They produce or release heat as needed. They even leak specialized cooling fluid from their skin, they call it sweating. The class chittered in disgust. But perhaps most impressive is their endurance. The professor displayed new footage. This is called an ultramarathon. Humans run continuous distances of over 160 kilometers, often in extreme conditions. That's not possible, Clicks 8 protested. No species can maintain sustained motion for that long without rest or fuel. Humans can. Professor ZYX 427 spots pulsed with intensity. They're pursuit predators. In their early history, they would chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. Some human populations still hunt this way. The classroom fell silent as the implications sank in. These creatures could simply follow their prey until it died of fatigue. But surely, VIX 15 ventured, surely they must rest sometimes? Professor ZYX 427 spots dimmed to a deep, serious purple. Because, dear students, the Galactic Council has a standing policy: never let humans know how extraordinary they are. The last thing we need is for them to realize that what they consider normal, the rest of the galaxy considers impossible. The holographic display in the Advanced Planetary Studies classroom flickered to life, revealing a swirling blue and green orb. Professor ZYX 427 watched with amusement as their students' appendages began to twitch, a sure sign of boredom among the Centaurian youth. They had no idea what was coming. Today, we begin our study of classification level 13 planets, the professor announced, their bioluminescent spots pulsing with excitement. Or as they're more commonly known, death worlds. The classroom erupted in a chorus of startled clicks and whistles. Level 13. Most habitable planets ranked between level 2 and level 4. Even their notorious combat training moon only reached level 7. This, Professor ZYX 427 continued, gesturing to the hologram, is Earth. Young Clicks 8, their top student, raised a sensory stalk. Professor, there must be an error. I'm detecting signs of civilization on that planet's surface. No error. The professor's spots flickered with satisfaction. Earth is not only inhabited, but it's also the homeworld of one of the galaxy's most influential species, humans. The students' exoskeletons rattled with disbelief. VIX 15, always the skeptic, extruded their logic nodes. Impossible. The gravity alone is 3.2 times galactic standard. The temperature variations are extreme enough to denature proteins. The atmosphere is thick with corrosive oxygen. Nothing sapient could evolve there. Professor ZYX 427 dimmed the classroom lights. The hologram shifted to show a human settlement nestled against a mountain. And yet, they did. Not only did they evolve there, but they thrived. Humans don't just survive Earth's conditions, they actively seek out even more extreme environments for what they call adventure. The image changed again, showing humans climbing sheer cliff faces, diving into crushing ocean depths, and running across scorching deserts. Each new scene caused more distress among the students. But surely they use advanced technology to accomplish these feats? Clicks 8 sensory stalk wavered uncertainly. That's the most remarkable part, Professor ZYX 427 said softly. Most of what you're seeing is done with minimal technological assistance. Humans possess natural abilities that seem impossible to us. They can repair broken bones, regenerate damaged tissue, and survive injuries that would be fatal to most species. They can maintain physical exertion for periods that would exhaust even enhanced beings. The professor paused, their spots pulsing with a mix of fear and admiration. But perhaps most terrifying of all, they can eat almost anything. Their digestive system can neutralize toxins that would dissolve our strongest metals. The classroom fell silent. Finally, VIX 15 spoke, their voice barely a whisper. Professor, why haven't we heard about this before?